All right, let me just quickly send this over. Get myself something to drink. Here's the message. There's the link. People should start joining any second now. I should probably move my microphone to the right spot. I'm very disorganized as always. This way is gonna work. Yeah, perfect. Okay. Hello. Hello, everybody. As you may have seen, I had a different stream this morning, or earlier on today. I went on a game show. Today, though, we're just going to do a little bit of feedback. There were already some tracks sent. To be honest, I'm not very high energy, so I might not do like the full 4 hours or whatever it usually goes into. Maybe like 2.5, 3 hours, something like that is what I'll aim for today. Also because I have a lot of editing work to do. 4 long format videos for next week, as well as double the shorts this month. Do you also listen to Psydup or Psybient? I listen to anything. I usually joke you can fart it to a microphone and I'll review it, but that is pretty close to being true. In the sense that you can send me any kind of music and I'll just listen to it, as long as it falls within the rules of our stream, which is outlined over here. So if you go into the Discord channel where you have to submit, if you go into the channel where you have to submit, there are some rules over here. And the basic 2 rules are that you give me permission to play the track on the live stream as well as in the video that is made from the live stream. And also that you don't submit any work to which you don't fully own the copyright. This means any remix, bootleg or edit will not be played. Did I win? I mean, not really. It was a draw at the end. First round, some community member won. So the whole idea behind the stream, it was very interesting. It's called the sauna. The whole idea behind the stream is that there's 2 rounds in which you're given a random task. And the random task is like flip a video or community sample. So there's different ways of obtaining a sample. And then they just give you a time of like half an hour to make a track out of that. So that was very interesting. And to be honest, I didn't really care about winning or losing, or I'm not like competitive like that. But it was fun. The first round was won by a community member, so people could join in. That's also why I like posted it everywhere, so that maybe my people would show up a little bit. But the second round was a tie between 4 out of the 5 participants. Because one guy didn't really, I guess not really take it seriously. He made like a troll track, and everybody voted for all of the other tracks. So that was kind of funny. It was a good show. It was a lot of fun. If they asked me again, I would go on there again. Okay, thanks. I see some tracks coming in over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 we already have. This one is a little bit wonky because, as this guy says over here, this track is also on YouTube Music. You may have enabled Content ID because it will flag projector stream if it has. He said it does not have content ID, but I don't fully trust that. So if this ends up being struck, which there's a good chance there will be, I am going to send him a quick message. But I am going to play the track on stream today. He did give me his word, so if that's not the case, then he'll have to deal with the consequences. Anyway, this is Psychedelic Man by Cloudsea that we're listening to now. I'm just going to jump into it, if you guys don't mind. Oh, it opens up a whole nother application.
Where the problem lies, people think it lies in taking too much. It lies in taking too little. Because if you take too little, you can resist it. You can struggle with it. And then it can turn into a real mess because you're afraid of it. And you actually have the power to some degree to resist it. What you want to do is take sufficient...
I'm not sure I'm a fan of the constant high frequency bit crushing noise that is happening on the pad.
To fully loaded is as quick as possible because the going up is somewhat terrifying. For example, let's use psilocybin as the model. Here's how it works for me. This is eating raw mushrooms. It comes on more slowly.
Kick and bass is bleeding into each other. You can see this transient, it's all messed up. The kick is being pushed down over here. That's not really what you want. I think you high passed, you did resample it, but high passed at some point, like in the master. So definitely don't do that. Tonality of the kick and bass is nice. I am not a fan of the snare though. A lot of lower frequencies in here that you really just don't need. Overall, the kick and bass could be a little bit louder, maybe like 2 dB. The drums don't really excite me, the top percussions. Feels like there's a big gap in the top percussions anytime the kick hits. Like even this one over here gets affected. I like this part, but again, the drums could be a little bit better. You could have that closed head come in a little bit stronger, so the rhythm goes actually higher. The energy actually rises here. I like how you're separating different sections into different ideas. That's a good thing. Not reusing the sound design that you're using in earlier sections, or at least not in the same way. That was like a little one shot that was made of an earlier sequence.
Now, this question about fear, which is a real question, because when everything begins to slide, and you're not, it's more than most people.
An effect like this, when you're playing it like that on the vocal, you should probably make sure that the vocal still comes through it, which currently isn't happening. What is happening seems to be that you're also low passing the vocal itself, which is a very odd choice for me because all of that information about what it's actually saying is in here. This bass seems very destroyed. It sounds very strange and gritty. Like looking at it over here, it seems like it's just moving through it and it's not a nice pitch bend. Do you see how it's completely destroyed over here? Like there's no stable harmonics like there is over here. And that is, I think, has to do with the pitch bend and the phase shifting that you're doing. Can I turn up the music? That's a bit of a strange decision, having the bass come back in there for one note. Hello Matt J, hello Bo, Sai, Deepicus, welcome. Sorry if I haven't been calling out names. Definitely some cool ideas in the track. I really like the way that you're writing it. You could spend a little bit more time on the fills and the transitions. And the main thing is just the mix. The mix isn't really that great. Like I guess the volume balances are decent, even though I said the kick and bass could be a little bit louder. But I feel like the overall gluing of the mix isn't there. And you can also see that the dynamics are all over the place with this track over here. It's like you forgot to master it. And that snare is just terrible. Like, it's actively annoying me at this point, the snare. Randomize the family, it sounds lit. It does, as I said, the whole production, all of the synth work, all of the structuring is very good. It sounds overall very nice, but the mix and in particular the sound selection of the snare is not something that I'm agreeing with here.
LSD and begin intense bouts of vomiting. This is not a proper reaction to LSD. Something is wrong, either with the LSD or with your relationship to it. Because a typical trip will put you through changes, but is not dangerous.
Not really a fan of the hard panning at the end there. That could be a little bit of a softer pan, not all the way through. What is even playing? Stop. Why is it playing a random... This also has autoplay. I hate Spotify. I don't like it to share music like that. I have my playlist on there and that is all I want, and I don't want you to suggest me anything. I'm perfectly capable of making my own music library. And the same is true for SoundCloud. They do the same thing where they automatically play the next track for you without you being able to turn that off whatsoever. Hello Tomz, welcome. But yeah, overall, good track, good production, get a better snare and get a better mix. Those two things, I would say, are a big improvement that you can make. And again, I hope that you're right in that it does not have content ID, seeing as this was a release track through a distributor. You can only get on SoundCloud, or you can only get on Spotify through a distributor, and the distributor usually wants to put your stuff in the content ID system. Or at least they ask for you to, if you want to do that. We have to explicitly, for Eclipse, we explicitly state that we don't want to be in the content ID system, like for all of our tracks. And we have to, every time that we go and release a track, we have to choose, do you want to be, or do you want to have the company that you're working with take revenue on your behalf? That is basically the content ID system. If you check that box, then I get into trouble. But as I said, if I do get into trouble, I know where to find you. I know your username. That's not really much of a threat, but I know it isn't meant to be. It's just so that we can resolve the issues. I'm not threatening anybody, I'm just telling you, like, okay, if it does come to a content ID claim, then obviously I'm going to contact you and we're going to try to sort this out like adults. Anyway, next up we have Waldeck over here, who is actually in the chat with us today. This is Solace for the Wary. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. You guys know how good I am at pronouncing things. Just in talking in general. If you've seen the... If you saw the sauna today, you will notice that my speaking skills are still not the best. Those the Australian guys, they were just constantly cracking jokes and stuff like that, and I'm not that good on camera. Maybe because it's not my first language, but also just in general, I'm not great at talking. pronouncing things, that kind of thing. Anyway, Solace for the Wary, Psytrance 2024. Let's have a listen. How do I submit my export? Exclamation point feedback. Let's hope that the bot is waking up today. Yes. Title not good? I mean, the title is very personal, so whatever meaning you have behind the title, if that works, then it should be okay. For you. The bass has no bass. Where be bass of bass? You can see there as well, there's no bass in the bass. Mixes isn't all that great. The synth sounds very loud. The drums are a bit strange. There isn't really proper balance, I would say, between the elements. I guess there you have like a one-shot. It sounded like that one-shot really overtook the main sequence, which is not what you want. You want your main sequences to be main sequences. I do like that you're switching it up constantly. Where you are switching it up makes very little sense. Because now we have a fill and we already switched element before that. But you can essentially see that this stuff was at the same volume as that stuff with the kick and bass. That's not a good thing. When the kick and bass comes in, the track should become louder, because the kick and bass is the most important element. So if the kick and bass is missing, you should have a lot of space over and not have the same amount of space with and without the kick and bass. Lol, I can't imagine how Australian must sound to a non-English speaker. It is okay. It is easy to understand. Of course, me being a veteran criminal, we just broke in crime, which is also what Australia is known for. I'm sorry. Very loud downlifter there. Like, the sound design is very cool, very dynamic, but that makes it a lot harder to mix it in properly, and that is something that you haven't really done. You haven't really tackled those dynamics. You've just left it very loud, I guess. Really strange track, because clearly you have some very keen ear for sound design. You know what you're doing in the sound design realm, but then processing that sound or mixing that sound design into the track is where you seem to really struggle. And also in the kick and bass creation. Like, for somebody that did all of that sound design, I would expect them to make a bass line that has some bass in the bass line, right? Whereas here, the lowest fundamental was just non-existent. It wasn't there. So I don't know if this is some kind of export issue. If you try to do my patch, which for those that know, my bass patch that I always use from Psychedelic Essentials Volume 3. Last day today, it's on sale, by the way. Spring sale 24 to get it with 30% off. Today is the last day. But this patch over here, it has a sub bass that is separated. So the sub bass only plays in the latter half of the beat. This is controlling the volume of the sub bass, as you can see through the wavetable thingy. And this makes sure that there's only sub bass when the kick is not playing. Maybe you try to do something like this and just like messed up the modulation. Like if you were to do this, for example, what you essentially have here is a bass that only has sub bass when the kick is playing, which is obviously the opposite from what you want, because then it removes the sub bass in the part where the sub bass is actually needed from the bass line. So maybe that is what happened. Low end bad, yet non-existent for the bass line. There was no low end for the bass line. Let me play it again, I can show you. I can just play in here, by the way, for YouTube as well. Like, where's the low end? Where's the bass of the bass? Do you see what I mean? Overall, I would say this track gives me a little bit mixed feelings. Not in a bad way. You definitely are capable of making good music. In terms of the production, in terms of the sound design, in terms of the structuring, although even there, with the structuring, there were a few things that I said where like an element came in halfway through, or it felt a little bit in a random position. Like there was one element that came in, played for maybe like 8 bars, maybe that does make a little bit of sense, but then the fill came and then it actually switched to the section of that element. It's almost like you tried to filter it in over the last 8 bars of the drop, but forgot the filter. Low cut on EQ. Why? Why would you remove the lower frequencies of a thing called bass? The whole point of a bass is to create lower frequencies. Why would you remove that? This is the problem that you see with people or I wouldn't say like tutorial makers that don't know what they're talking about. Because at some point I'm going to be looking back at all of the information that I know now and I'm going to laugh in my own face. Just like I do right now when I look at my old tutorials from maybe even like 2 years ago. The problem is that some people don't, I guess, address it. So what I sometimes do, and you guys may have noticed this if you're a fan of my older content, every once in a while I'll go through some of my older, more questionable content, and I still see if I agree with the advice that I give in the video. And if the answer is no, I delete the video. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to be in the position where I have to explain some advice that I gave 3 years ago that I no longer agree with. For example, I once said that you should only use linear phase processing on your bassline, as to not introduce any phase issues. While that is true, the phase relationship, or the phase relationship between the harmonics is the whole idea behind the sidetrans bassline. That is what sets it apart from just a saw wave with a filter on it. So you are not going to get phase issues, but you're also not going to get a sidetrans bassline if you follow that advice. So that video, it no longer exists. You can no longer find it. I deleted it, removed it completely off of YouTube. I don't even think I unlisted it, just completely deleted it. Because I don't want to have anything to do with that anymore. But there is advice around that where people say you should low cut this to get rid of the rumble that may or may not be there. Whatever. Don't blindly follow that kind of advice. When you're using a low cut and you just throw on a low cut to see if it's or to do what the tutorial says, essentially, then you're not really making music in the right way, in my opinion. You should try to focus on, okay, what is the point of this sound and what does this sound need to do? how does this sound need to behave in order to fully be able to do its function, right? Because now I have a person in chat said I put a low cut on the EQ on the bass line, and I don't know why. Then that low cut has no function. If you cannot explain why a certain effect is in your project, don't put it in your project. Because there's negatives to this kind of stuff, which we can see over here, where you have a bass line without bass. Anyway, a lot of work still to do, as you can imagine. But some good ideas. Hopefully with some better mixing, you can get a better track out of that. Next up, we have... Let me quickly check if there's any Patreons. There is a Patreon. So how this works is, this is Patreon. You can see a red name over here. He is paying me money, so he gets to go first. This is Portal Keepers by Ioyo, I guess. This is my best homie, no copyright shit. Okay. So this is not actually his track, which is interesting. But I'll still listen to it, as long as I imagine that you have permission to show his music on my stream. Because as I said, there's rules to this kind of stuff. Anyway, this is going to be Portal Keepers Ioyo, or by Ioyo. Let's have a listen. Very strong bass here. Kick transient is being destroyed here. That's unfortunate. This is the kind of bass line that you would definitely need to resample if you're doing a lot of processing. With a sliding bass, all of those frequencies that sit over here with all of the filters are just going to move into the transient of your kick drum. There's not really a lot of punch to this track. It's just kind of like there's not a it's missing that. And part of the reason is because of the phase shifting that we saw before going into the kick transient, but I also think the bass line might be a little bit too loud for the kick. And that the kick doesn't feel stronger as the bass. That's how you get punch out of your kick, is the kick is just louder than the bass line. And that's why you see almost every psytrance producer put their bass line maybe 1 or 2 dB quieter than their kick drum. Overall, I really like the sound design. The track just could have a better mix that allows the punch to come through more. That's the only real issue that I see over here, is that anytime there's bass playing, it's just this wall of bass, this wall of sound. There isn't really any groove to the track. Kick does hit the spectrum, though it should be louder. Yeah, but the point is not the kick itself, it's everything that is happening around the kick. right? You can see that it's a sausage. It's just flat. There's no dynamics to it. There's no bounce to it, because it just sends this wall of bass to you. Like, as I said, it doesn't really have a that kind of thing, because there's really just not a lot of space in the mix for that to happen. An important thing to realize in music production is that every element interacts with every element. Right? So if you have a punchy kick and you add a very loud bass line to that, the kick becomes less punchy, because it's all relative. We're all listening to just one audio signal. And it's not like you can just listen to the kick. You have to listen to the whole track. So the kick, even if I'm listening to it now, it's not like it's sounding off. It's just that the context that it's placed in doesn't give it the space that it needs to be punchy. I deleted the Reaper track and my project from my computer. I can't fix it now. But take it as a learning opportunity for the next project. Think about any effect, any process that I'm using in my music production creation should have a purpose. What am I trying to achieve with this process? If you cannot explain it, then it should probably not be there. I do want to finally come back to this final part of the track. The kick and bass is really the only issue that I see with the track here. We can even look at the waveform. You can see that it's the punch is literally being drawn out by the bass line. You can see the waveform over here. This is where the kick is supposed to be, but it's just like just destroyed all the way through because this bass line is still playing. The bass line should stop playing over here. This should be the last oscillation, and then this should be flat silence, and then you should have a full strong kick transient and not something that is being pushed around by another element. That is really what I mean with the whole context essentially matters, right? As I said, if you take a punchy kick and you just layer a sub bass on top of its transient, which is essentially what you've done here, and you push that into a limiter, you're going to lose all of that punch because it's getting destroyed by the sine wave that is also playing here. That is why cleanliness is an important idea in kick and bass creation, to prevent that kind of stuff from happening, to prevent this loss of power from the kick drum. What I wanted to say about this track is that the only thing that I've talked about is the kick and bass in this track, right? With the feedback that I gave, and you can take that as a positive in that there's not much more to talk about, in that the rest of the track is very, very good sounding. Like even the mix itself, just the frequency balance of everything, even though you're losing punch from the kick and maybe the kick bass balance, the kick bass volume is not entirely correct, but just the overall spectrum of the entirety of the mix is very good. You can see the tail of the bass just there. Yeah, this stuff. This is where the bass stops playing, and then this is all of the stuff, maybe even up until here, right? This is because we can see that here it goes in it, and the transient is only almost in the positive values. So you're losing half of the waveform. Here again, you're losing half of the waveform. This should be oscillating around the silence line. It is oscillating around a line like somewhere over here, right? Like this little segment, this stuff. It should be oscillating around this bit over here, because all of the tail and all of this stuff from the bass, it isn't really doing anything. It's just clocking up the space that the transient itself should take up. It needs to go. Exactly. You just resample, cut it out, and then just paste audio in there, and then don't filter it anymore. Next up, we are going to go back here. As I said, oh, we do have more messages. Maybe there's another Patreon. There is a lot of people today. Look at this. I have a lot of work to do. There's no more Patreons though, so we're going to move on to Virtual Instinct. which submitted his track Psychedelic Chaos. I believe we may have listened to this before, but correct me if I'm wrong. And let's see what you have. Virtual Instinct, Psychedelic Chaos, 151 BPM master. Oh, I can play it in the thing. I can play it in the Discord. Maybe not. Very strong intro idea. If you're again going into the kick and bass with millions of sequences playing, I'm going to rage quit. Virtual Instinct, I think I've said this many times before, he puts like 3 times as many elements as he actually needs in his tracks. I have no idea what to listen to right now. It is a little bit clearer, but there's still like maybe like 3-4 elements playing. I like this part here, we have a nice clear segment. I like the snare. Overall the kick and bass is sounding good as well. It seems like you resampled it, but there's another filter on it somewhere in the master. This is a very common mistake. You resample your kick and bass and then you put the high pass filter on the master, basically undoing a lot of the work that you would have normally had with the cleaning. Right, because it's again going through a filter. In this case it's not problematic, but it is getting to the point where you could say like this could be done better. Right, like this little thing here doesn't need to be here. It seems like the transient is slightly up. This won't be a noticeable problem, but you can still improve it a bit more if you want to. Something I'll never really understand about this style of psytrance is that they seem to be like very counterintuitive with the energy flow. What I mean by that is here now we have all of these atmospheres, right? So this is low energy, there's this slow thing going on, but this was also playing in the high energy bit, where all of the synths were going crazy. So what's up with that? Like here I can understand you want nice slow textures, you want nice slow atmospheres, that kind of stuff. This is the chill part of the track, right? And this is then kind of like a breakdown. I was hoping we were going to go back to a more energetic part, but I guess not. Not really a fan of the main pad / atmosphere being panned all the way to the right. It's for the vibe. Yeah, but aren't you trying to create different stages of energy levels? Right? In the sense that at the high energy you want people to be more energetic. You want people to, I guess, dance more, dance faster, right? Because that's the kind of flow that is happening throughout the psytrance track. That is how you guide the energy. Then why is there still like a very slow element in the high energy parts? Like over here I can still understand it. This is kind of like the middle ground. But once all of the synths and all of the sequences come in, isn't it just better to completely take out the atmospheres? Even this is still like semi-energy, because there's no open hat. Once there is an open hat in this kind of part, where you have the synths playing, I would consider that high energy, and I would personally not have any atmospheres in there. Yeah, here. I would not have any atmospheres and just play around with synths. You can hear there's this like very strong zooming kind of atmosphere now. I do like that overall the track is a little bit emptier. It feels like you spend a little bit more time trying to understand where all of the different elements go and how many elements should a particular project for a particular part of the track need. One of the things that you may want to take a look at is designing one or two more main synths, because right now it feels like there's two FM synths in here and they're being used throughout the whole track. In my opinion, having a few more that you're switching between and stuff like that can be very useful, makes parts of the track more unique. Notwas, how are you doing? Welcome. I see it as another layer of ear candy, but I guess it's personal preference. Of course, at the end of the day, I'm sitting here to give my opinion, but I like to think that I know a few things about music, and one of the things that I know about music is that slow sounds tend to slow down the track. So maybe this is just me misunderstanding a particular part of this subgenre of psytrance, right? Because for me, when I'm writing my own progressive stuff, an atmosphere that sits in the high energy part is really a no-go, because most of the time it's just going to drag down the energy level. Like, you need to find a really good atmosphere to be able to do that. One of the tracks that is an exception to that I can quickly maybe talk about, because this is interesting, is my track Beyond. Somewhere in this big list, this over here. Low, there it is. This has like an atmosphere in the high energy part over here. But it shouldn't be. Buffering. Always. I should be back now. Hopefully this is the only time that this happens during the stream. I think it also happens once or twice during the game show that I did today. The sauna. I may have dropped out like a few times there. Which is just annoying. I've mentioned multiple times, new apartment. The very first thing I'm going to purchase is a new internet solution. Because this is terrible. This is not working for me. I was hoping that it would stay flexible. Yes, you are back. No? Arno, you back? I don't know. Was I not back? Oh, maybe like for some people I wasn't back, but for other people I was. It's almost like it's not happening on my side if you say it like that. Like, just YouTube itself is disconnecting me for a while. Right? If for one person I was back and for another one I wasn't. Anyway, what I was trying to tell was that this track actually has an atmosphere in a high energy part of the track. Please don't mind the distortion. I couldn't find a better version of it right here. But this has that slow atmosphere in there, right? One of the things that does for me is that even though this is high energy, this part is even higher energy. So this is still at the highest level in terms of all of the drums, in terms of all of the elements, in terms of the pure speed of the track, I would almost say. But this part is still perceived faster. This is a terrible master. I did such a bad job mastering this thing. I really hope that this isn't the master that I eventually ended up releasing. Anyway, so for me personally, there is some cases in which you can have atmospheres in your track or in a high energy part of the track, but I would be cautious against that because it drags down the energy level of your track. It makes that part of the track sound slower than it actually is. Maybe I mean more like atmospheric one-shots and sounds, not ones that play all the way. I mean, it's still, because it's just a slow sweep sound. Even if you play it every once in a while, then your track is going to sound slower every once in a while. At least that is how I personally perceive those elements, right? Because I can understand it when the kick and bass is playing on its own, when there's not a lot of other drums playing, when there's not a lot of high sequences playing. In that case, it can be nice to have that extra slow texture that again indicates that the track is like slower, is lower in energy. But I would think that any sidetrance track that is playing with that energy level, where at some point the energy is rising because you're adding more sequences, you're adding more drums, that at some point you want to have the highest level of energy. And in my opinion, you're not going to get there if there is a bunch of slow elements also playing at the same time. That's just my thought on the way that you would work around it. But then again, it's not exactly the sidetrance that I make. So take this with a massive grain of salt. I don't technically know what I'm talking about, is what I should say. It's all good, all back, perfect. Okay. Then next up, we have no more new patrons, I think. Nope. Okay, then we have this guy, CBPM. Hey, this is an early work in progress for a potentially track for an upcoming filthy heavy bass / neurofunk album. Okay, so this may not actually be music because it's potentially a track. It's not actually a track. It may be a track, it may not be a track. We will just have to find out. Buzzkill, work in progress by CBPM. It says it's playing, but it's not. There we are. Just stare at it for a little bit longer. Cool phaser atmosphere that you've going on there. Up until this point, it sounds like music. It sounds like a track to me, so I don't know why you would call it a potential track. Hello, John Doe. How are you doing? Is the sale still on? Yes. I was gonna say like this is aggressively loud, like too loud, but then I remembered that I was adding 4 dB of boost. fair bit of noise. Do squish and compress, almost ear fatigue. Yes, I turned it up by, unfortunately, 4 dB because the last track was so quiet, or a few tracks before. So now we'll hear the actual loud. This vocal over here is way too loud for me. That's way too crushed up, because a lot of the loudness is coming from low frequencies, which doesn't really annoy you. But the high frequencies sometimes have a lot of loudness in them. Yeah, this is hard to listen to with the amount of high frequencies and how loud it is. Overall though, cool production. I'm always a big fan of this kind of tech, of like very loud stuff. I like it, but very squished. Yes, that's the whole point. That's the point of drum and bass. It's like saying, I like metal, but I don't like guitars. Too many guitars in metal, but for the rest I like it. And they do a lot of screaming, which I also am not a big fan of. Like, that's the point of the genre, right? It's to be loud, it's to be aggressive, it's to be in your face. To a point that even Psytrance doesn't reach, where they just squish everything. As I said, there's a few things that were a little bit too loud. Overall though, this is again one of those tracks where you have that kind of pristine loudness that you can only get through very selective mixing. One of the other things that I noticed is that in the higher frequencies in the drop itself as well, it was often almost too detailed and you couldn't really follow any kind of like main rhythm. Like there's a lot of ear candy and that kind of stuff. Is it okay to clip when making dubstep and drum and bass? That's the whole point. The whole point is that when you're making drum and bass, you clip everything. Literally every track in your project should have a clipper on it. If you're using something like the clip to zero method, that would be the case. There is a clipper somewhere on it. Even in Psytrance, like most of the synth sounds that I use, I am clipping them at some point. Right? Either with the saturator over here. This is either soft clipping or I set it to digital clip to hard clip. But even on soft clip, it's just clipping the signal. Or in the mixing stage, I use something like free clip over here to just clip some stuff off to get that extra little bit of space out of it. Because it's all a balancing game, right? The more space that you can get out of it, if I can get 3 dB of headroom out of this, that is 3 dB of headroom that has opened up for a different element. So, not really that much. Nowadays it is, yes. Nowadays, drum and bass is this loud. This pristine, like 4 LUFS, maybe sometimes 3, maybe sometimes, I say positive numbers, but it should be negative, like -4, -3, -2. That kind of loudness is what they're aiming for in drum and bass. That's the whole point of the genre now. You may not like it, and then you can listen to some old school stuff, or you can listen to jungle, a genre that doesn't really do that, that stays more dynamic. But the aggressive drum and bass that you hear nowadays in the clubs and stuff like that, it is loud. That's the point. And you're going to sound better if you're louder than the person next to you. So making it as loud as possible is like partially the goal of the genre. That's where it gets its aesthetic from. In the same way that metal gets its aesthetic from distorted guitars, right? People are going to continue to distort it more and more and more. And this is the progression that you see with metal as well. If you look at how metal kind of progressed throughout the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, what you'll find is that the subgenre kind of split up, and then part of that subgenre started to push the boundaries of the loudness and the extremity of the distortion and the extremity of the screaming, what they did, and all of that kind of stuff. And that stuff we tend to call like death metal and that area. Drum and bass is doing the same thing now, but digitally. In the sense that they're trying to get as much loudness out of the wave file that they're physically possible to get. And that's the whole aesthetic. If you don't like it, then there's a different form of drum and bass that may be more suited for you. But this is where the drum and bass style is going in modern days. At least that is what people tend to produce. Yeah, this track is around -4 LUFS, maybe -3 momentary. -4 LUFS integrated is very, very loud. But if you can get there cleanly, which I would argue you almost did, as I said, the vocal is a little bit too loud, so maybe try to take care of that, because it kind of burns in your ears at those higher frequencies. If you can get there cleanly, which in this particular case, I would say you are getting there very cleanly, minus the few details, of course, then that's okay, right? And there's mixing techniques that you can follow to make sure that you get there cleanly, or in a way that is still pleasant, which is, for example, the clip to zero method, but there's probably also other methods, although the clip to zero method, as far as I know, is probably the best documented, even though it boils down to put the clipper on everything. The whole idea behind it and all of the technicalities behind it take up like 20 hours of video footage on Platformatics channel, I guess, maybe even more with everything that they've done so far. I think it's time for you to soon stop the stream. Too much buffering on my side right now. It doesn't show anywhere in my graph. Stream health. Stream has been healthy the whole time. We had one disconnect. It's looking good right now, so maybe it's a you problem. It can be the case that your internet is also not the greatest, and that part of the buffering is coming from me, and part of the buffering is coming from your internet just not being able to keep up. I'm not going to restart the entire stream because just you have a problem. There's 15 other people in the chat here. There was only one disconnect for me. Yeah, everybody else seems to have an okay stream, so it may be on your end as well. Next step is Ibex Psy. I need to go through them a little bit faster, because as you can see, there's quite a lot of stuff here. So we'll listen to Spiritual BS. Very strange title, but okay. It did just disconnect there. Because then data starter, the whole stream just messed up. If I do it over here, does that impact the stream again? Now I can play it. I should just do it over here. But loading that web page turned down my or lowered my upload speed for some reason. Either way, Spiritual BS by Ibex. Cool atonal moving around kind of chord thing that you're going on here.
Bullshit. The belief that there is something special about you which separates you from others.
Very Captain Hook vibey track. Again, I'm not sure if I'm a fan of the pad in here, that atonal thing happening here. Side-tech feelings, yes. The same problem as we said with the last track, where it sounds like an element that is really slowing down the track. Also in this case, I feel like it's sometimes just out of key with the track, like because it's not really a key and it's shifting up and down. It's like atonal stuff, right? But it still feels sometimes in tune, sometimes out of tune. There's a lot happening in this track though. I think you're trying to do a little bit too much throughout the track.
Something I haven't really talked much about, though I've certainly been meaning.
Strange
Spiritual
crash delay, I guess.
or what you might
I wanted to check the cleanliness, but that's not really going to be an issue over here. You are morphing into your bass transient though with the end of the kick, so I'm not sure if you're a fan of that.
in this
But I would
that I know where to begin.
probably try to resolve that. Some elements out of key, yeah. Overall, I would say it sounds like you're trying to do too much with this track. And I'm not good at music theory. I have no perfect picture whatsoever. So out of elements or out of tune elements, I cannot really hear that. Apart from the atmosphere thing that I mentioned before, where it just felt a little bit off. I'm not good at just hearing any element and hearing if it's in tune or not. What I do hear is that you're just trying to do too much at any given point in the track. Like, you have some cool sound design in here, but that doesn't really come out because there's 17 other things happening. Also, a fill every now and again would be nice.
The belief that there is something special about you which separates you from others.
Strange for the gating to come in halfway through the section. It's like the gate was sleeping on the job, and while you were rendering the track, it was like, oh wait, I'm supposed to gate this sound. Not really a fan of the open hat either, listening to it now on its own. I think this is the kind of open hat that only really works if there's a lot of other drums already playing, maybe kind of like a layer or something like that. Yeah, here we're just out of tune. I can even hear this.
Pseudo-spirituality or something.
Few strange decisions. Just in the mix and that kind of stuff. Also the amount of elements that play at any certain point. Those two things, they are kind of correlated because your mix is going to suffer from having too many elements in it, of course. And you prevent that in the production. In my opinion, after the intro, that pad should, for example, no longer play. Like ever. Because it doesn't really work in a drop segment. Even at that last part where you're glitching it up, I would say it wasn't really that interesting anymore because it kind of played throughout the whole track. Maybe if it then comes back, it becomes more of an interesting element and it's like, hey, there's the thing from the intro again. But now that you're playing it throughout the whole track, it's like, hey, there's that pad again that I've been listening to for basically the whole track. You know what I mean? And that's true with some other elements as well. Some people pointed out there were some elements out of tune. Definitely go fix that, because that's not what we want. That last one, we hear it all together. I even could hear that, because it just went out of key for some reason. You were like, oh, it's going to play a different key now. But, yeah, don't do that. Play stuff in key, in tune. That usually sounds good. Anyway, I got voice resample from Nina Kravint in this track. I didn't got copyright strike when I uploaded it to my channel. Please read before you play this track. Okay, so you don't own all of the copyright over here for your submission, so then I'm not going to play it. It's very simple. It's very simple, right? The rules are the rules. They're there for a reason. You just say like, hey, there's this voice from this person that I did not get copyright for, but I did not get struck when I uploaded it, so you should just take the risk. I am a much bigger channel. I'm a much bigger target. I actually make money doing what I do, so whenever I put some music up on my channel, people could actually say like, oh, this guy is making money off my music, of my voice, let's take that down. So just because you didn't get a copyright strike doesn't mean anything. And that's not the rule of the feedback stream. So I don't know what to tell you. I cannot play this. You just admitted to me like, hey, this is a track that you cannot play. That was very dumb to do that. It's okay if you want to skip. Yeah, I'm going to skip that, obviously. Even though for vocals, I would argue that it's probably going to fall under fair use, but I don't want to go to court over it, so somebody else has to figure that out for me before I do that. Somebody else has to get a judge ruling. I'm not going to be the person that is going to do that. Next up, we have Deepigus Condition Override over here. Root Sector Records. Sounds very interesting. Let's have a listen. This looks very loud. I don't have to turn my volume up, I think. Bit of a sudden start to the track here. Kick and bass is sounding nice, it looks clean as well. Very good. I like the hats in this section more than I liked them in the last section, because now you have that open hat keeping the stability in there. In the last one it felt like the pattern was just kind of moving all over the place and wasn't really that danceable. I personally like it when the whole track is working together to make you dance. Here again, you can hear those kind of atmospheres where I was talking about it. It feels like they're slowing down this high energy part of the track. At least that's what it sounds like to me. That part feels like it's getting a little bit clogged up by the atmospheres and all of the things that are happening, like the kick and bass gets put a little bit more towards the background. That's usually not something that you would want. Lol had to remove my submission too then. Yeah, that's unfortunate, but there's rules to this kind of thing, which you can read right over here. There's 2 rules and one, I'd prefer it if you work like that, so there's literally 2 things that you have to take into account. As cool as all of the sound design is in these kind of tracks, it feels sometimes like or to me, like there isn't really a lot separating this track from any other track in the same subgenre. Maybe it's because I don't listen to it enough, maybe it's because I don't know enough about this particular type of psytrance, the darker, more psychedelic vibe. But it feels like you're missing like the main memorable elements of the track, and it's very similar in sound design to any other track in this subgenre. I have a hard time explaining exactly what I mean here, but like listening to this part over here, I wouldn't be able to remember what happened 2 sections ago in the track, right? And what may be nice is to do all of this kind of stuff, and then, or maybe 2, 3, 4 sections in the track, remove a lot of the main sequences that you're using over here, and just have one main sequence, maybe like an FM sound, maybe like some glitchy vocal that you're glitching up, that kind of stuff, to make the track a little bit more recognizable. Hello Subject Ultra, welcome, welcome. I think these atmospheres are too loud over here. It feels like they're overpowering the kick and bass to a certain extent. I wouldn't want that in my dance music. I would want to have the part that I'm dancing to always loud and powerful. Most people on the dance floor won't remember what happened 2 seconds ago anyway, but that's for other reasons. But yes, I get what you mean. Yeah. Sorry, that's the autoplay again. That's not his track, that last part. I get what you mean as well, but we're making music, I guess, for not just... Well, are we? Are we just making music for the people that are too stoned out of their minds to recognize what the fuck is going on, or are we also making music for other reasons too? Other reasons, yeah. Right, you would... At the end of the day, I would like people to remember the experience that I would give them if they were to come to a festival or something and I would be playing there. One of the two things that needs to happen for that is that I actually need to take my DJing seriously enough to a point that I actually get invited to festivals. But that's a different point of discussion. The other point of discussion is that your tracks need to be memorable for that to happen. And if it's just... I'm thinking like if it's just the psychedelic sound design that's in there, just the noises and the bleeps and the bloops that we like to do, and the squelches and all of the cool like FM setups and whatever you use, but that you also hear in like 10 other tracks. Is that really memorable enough? It's the moment for me. I don't want to sing along. That's not the point though. It's the point. What you're trying to do is you're trying to give the person an experience that they will remember, right? At the end of the day, at least for me personally, when with my music, is I want to leave an impression on people, and I'm questioning if the way that the sounds in your track are doing that. No drugs, no festival. What? The exact opposite. No, right? I think you are perfectly capable of enjoying a festival without consuming anything, if you wanted to. I take drugs to hear better. I guess, yeah. It depends obviously from person to person. But personally, I would like to, with my music, as I said, leave an impression on people, and I doubt that the sound design that you're using actually does that. Then again, I am not too familiar with this type of psytrance. So everything that I say about your music, you have to take that with that little bit of grain of salt, in that I'm not exactly familiar, or I'm not entirely sure of what I'm saying is the correct step for the genre itself. It's just my opinion in this case. Well, have a listen to another one and see if it's recognizable that's a different track. If that's not the case, then maybe you should consider making your track a little bit more memorable if you cannot hear the difference. At that point, okay? If I at any point say, hey, wait, did I put on the new track throughout this playthrough? Then you'll know whether your track is memorable or not. Kick and bass could be a bit cleaner. I don't think that this is properly resampled. Maybe you put a filter on it. But then again, the transient of the kick does not have that issue. So I think you just LFO tooled this. Right? Force Vice, I absolutely love this Dark Side on Deepicus. I like it too. It's very well produced. It is sounding very nice. And I don't want this like last conversation of it not memorable be interpreted as an overall negative of the track. The only thing that I'm saying is, as a producer, I can definitely hear differences between this track and the last track. I'm just not too sure any regular person on the dance floor would. Right, so for that reason I would say like maybe you're lacking a little bit of memorable elements to the track. It's just the kind of bleeps and bloops that we like to do in terms of sound design. But to a person that isn't really into music production, I doubt that one squelch is going to sound any different from any other squelch to them. Yes, LFO Tool sounded better to my ears. I think just resampling it, I think that's always the best option. I highly doubt that you're ever going to be in the situation where free extra punch is going to be a negative. Like, for example, what you could do over here in this particular segment is drop out everything but a few of the atmospheres and then have that granular vocal really on top, right? So it becomes an actual element that is taking over. Right now the granular vocal is kind of like the background atmosphere here. So the vocal doesn't really come through. And vocals are a very memorable part of the track usually. At this point they may be granularized to a point where you cannot really understand them. But they're also put in a part of the track and in the mix in such a way that you don't really get the chance to try to understand them. Because there's a lot of stuff happening on top of it, which is, in my opinion, very cool sound design, but for, I guess, a non-music producer, it's just going to sound like a bunch of bleeps.
Presence of religious ice.
Again, apart from the memorabilia point that I'm making throughout this feedback, the rest of the production is great. There's like nothing else for me to talk about. Mix is great, it's all sounding nice, it's all well produced, it's all like spaced together properly. It doesn't feel like the track is ever, or very little times where it feels like overly full or overly empty or anything like that. Maybe this atmosphere stuff is a little bit on the loud side. Now we can see what's happening with the, yeah, no resampling. As you can see. Overall, as I said, very good track. Just lacking a little bit in the memorabilia department. How many tracks do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6. Because this is a remix. I just mixed but didn't master it. But for me, it sounded good enough. So I released it. Lamau. Melodic Techno Remix. As you can see, this is not his own. So I cannot actually play that. As per the rules, of course. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tracks left right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a very quick break. I'll be back very soon. YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. As such, viewers will experience buffering. This is the first time that it sends me this message in 1.5 hours of streaming. And to me, OBS, while I'm looking at it, it's going down. Why? Can we stop buffering, please? Thank you. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll put on some of my music so that you guys have something to listen to. In the meantime, if you want to support the stream, the best way to do it is by purchasing some of my products. Today is a very good day to do that because it is the end of my spring sale. So if you use spring sale 24, all lower caps, no spaces, no nothing, then you'll get 30% off of any of my products here on my Gumroad page. I did almost less total revenue on the screen there. That's not something that I would want to do, I think. Anyway, I'm going to post a profile over here. As I said, today is the last day. So this code includes 30% off the masterclass of all of my packs over here. My mini packs, which are just $2, but still you get a little discount. And all of my remix packs and licenses as well. So everything that you see in this store, if anything interests you, make sure to go over here and check it out and use code SPRINGSALE24, all lower caps, all attached, no spaces, and then you should get 30% off on checkout. Okay, let me get which track? This one. Haven't played this in a while. Hello? Thank you. Everything seems very slow today. The internet, the hard disk in my Ableton. And I did not leave my PC on overnight even. Sometimes when that happens, I come back to the PC and it's just slowing down even more. I got your Vital and Quality kicks. I hope you like them. They're very good packs. Also, the Psychedelic drum pack has some cool kicks in there as well. They're all BPM tight, which the Quality kicks aren't. They're just kick drums. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the track. I hope that you enjoyed the products if you do end up buying some of them. Of course, all of your support is massively appreciated in that regard. And I'll be back when the track finishes. And we'll get back into listening to some of your guys' music. Viewership just halved during the break, and when I came back it was constantly disconnected. Should I redo the stream? Also, why is this on? Double sound coming. Now it should be good. Right? This is just a track playing. Why is the audio... Good, perfect. Things got messed up a little bit. I'll talk about this. Not that they're annoying or responsible in any way, but the guys that I did the game show with today, the way that they handled the connection and stuff like that required me to move like 2 things around in my audio setup, but I have like no idea how to properly restore it. So now there's like an extra thing over here in my OBS that was just turned on for some reason, that never caused any audio to go through it, but now for some reason audio comes through it. There isn't a proper way for me, even with this massive virtual mixer that I have over here. Maybe I should just pay for the full version with the one that has like 16 tracks in it or something like that. But even now I cannot find a proper way to separate out every single audio signal that I really need in here, because I need one audio signal that is just my microphone. I need another audio signal that needs to be both my microphone and the music that I'm playing, and ideally I would also have a audio signal which is just all of the music that I'm playing. And as you can see, I only have 2 virtual outputs, so I'm missing a virtual output in here, which is the root cause of a lot of my audio problems when it comes to routing, and sometimes double audio, and sometimes no music. Sometimes I start the stream without a microphone. A lot of those issues is coming from the particular voice meter setup that I have right now. Is it still buffering? Is it still causing issues, the stream? It's like it's getting worse. I opened up what did I do? I refreshed my Gumroad, and immediately it broke the connection of the stream. Let's have a little try here. Let's see if I go to Gumroad again. Does that kill the stream? Home analytics. No, now it's okay. Sometimes little buffers. Yeah, I don't want that to happen. That is not helping the viewer experience. So that isn't great. I don't want that. But it's never. It feels right now the way that it's buffering. If it's like it's the, how would I say it? Like it's just genuinely not keeping up with the internet speed, which is different from the disconnects that we usually have, where it just sometimes malfunctions for a little bit and then reconnects and then it just works fine again for like an hour. It's almost like I'm having multiple different internet issues. And I don't know which part is the actual internet, which part is the modem. I am still convinced that maybe I'm just misconfiguring something inside of OBS for those like short disconnects that happen like every hour and a half that we sometimes get. But looking at the graph now and looking at the viewers and that going down, that indicates to me that the stream quality was low for a while. Because that, generally speaking, tends to happen. Or generally speaking, people tend to disconnect when the stream quality suffers, right? So if I'm constantly disconnecting, then it's not a pleasant viewer experience, so people leave. And now it seems like people are coming back. So that's good. Next up, let's have a look at who's next. The Beardo, who's here in chat as well. Impulsive Galactic Tentacles. I have no idea what that should be referring to. Either way, let's have a listen over here. I thought this was this guy over here with another track. Because usually his stuff, when he shares stuff, it also has the same like Spanish thing. Or is this Spanish? I don't... Oh, this is German. Ah, never mind. But it's like the same profile picture and that kind of stuff. And it's also kind of like the same cover art that he uses. Anyway, let's have a listen. Impulsive Galactic Tentacles. It's German. Yeah. I got that. Took me a little bit to get there, but I got there in the end. Some of the elements sound very mono. I don't know if that's a deliberate choice. Overall, the stereo field of the track is very stereo. But some of the elements sound like completely mono. You can have them more mono than other elements, but what I would do is probably have a little bit of stereo width on some of the elements, and the elements that you really want to push back in the stereo field, if that's what you're trying to do, make them just more stereo. Right? So that it's not like fully mono, fully stereo. It's just both of them are somewhere in between. One is just more stereo than the other. Kick and bass could be a little bit louder. I like the fact that you resampled it. That's nice. One of the things that I would recommend for almost any producer working on kick and bass is that they low pass their kick and bass. I'm not a fan of high pass filters, but I am a fan of low pass filters. Specifically for the kick, I aim around 10 kilohertz, and for the bass, maybe around 8, something like that. One of the things that it does is it stabilizes your clicks a little bit, especially when MP3 compression and that kind of stuff comes on it, or in this case SoundCloud compression. Right now, not all of the transients feel entirely nice, and you can prevent a lot of that kind of stuff happening from just low passing it and not having these ultra high frequencies in your kick and bass transient. Sound design is cool. As you can see, your snare has a very strong transient over here. When you go into mastering, this is going to be an issue. A trick that you can use is to use a modulation curve on your snare that looks somewhat like this. So you take LFO tool, and then you just take out the transient. Just like the very, very first part. It should be hard to like get it to line up if you're just zoomed in like this. You just take out the very first part over here, and then even you can dial back the effect a little bit more. But you essentially just get rid of the click that is already provided by the kick. Overall, I would say, I don't know if this is like finalized and mixed and released, but it doesn't feel like you mixed it. Especially in that last part, it felt very busy in terms of the amount of sequences, elements, and those kind of things that are in here. And there isn't really like a clear distinction in importance, which is often what you'll find is very helpful on your main synths. You want to focus the listener to a particular element. Like, for example, over here you're doing that. Right now it changes, right? Right now the FM synth is the one that grabs the attention because it goes in the highest frequencies and it's very loud. Now the melodic thing is taking over. It kind of switches a little bit, right, with what the main element is, which is really nice. But in other parts of the track it felt a little bit unclear the way that it was mixed. Do you recommend to low pass your quality kicks? There are spikes above 10k. I think quality kicks should be okay, but it's always good to check. Yes, it's always good to check. I'm still a beginner. I started about 1.5 years ago. For 1.5 years of work, of learning to make music, this is very good. Hello Mindbee. I don't know if I said hello before, but if I didn't, hello, welcome to the stream. Here on the hats, it's nice to have a little bit of telephoto so that you get a little bit of bounce towards the kick. Right now it sounds very flat, very still. Over here, what might be cool is to go back to just kick and bass flat, right? As opposed to constantly chord changing. Because it feels like there's not really a lot of melodic stuff that it's playing with. I know that atmosphere is also moving around, but there's a lot of stuff playing in the root note as well. So it could be nice to add a little bit of extra variation to the track by not always using the same bass progression. Some cool ideas in here. I'm not sure I'm a fan of the missing kick, though. Like, it takes away a lot of the danceability of the track. It feels like I'm going out of sync with the track if I'm just dancing to it. Very good for 1.5 years. Exactly. Production-wise, there's a lot of interesting things going on here. It just needs better mixing and then some small details maybe to check out. Like, as I said, I'm not a fan of the kick missing there. That sounds counterproductive to what Psytrance is trying to be, right? Which is getting people dancing and getting people in a trance feeling. Overall, there were some parts where, as I said, it's a little bit too busy. I hate autoplay. I just don't see the reason why I cannot just turn it off. But that's my problem. I should be playing it through thingy, through the Discord itself. Happy track. Would a gentle dynamic shelf around 10k be better than a linear phase cut on the kick and bass bus channel? Why not just low pass the kick and bass? Or, yeah, low pass the kick and bass with a normal filter. This works. Just use a filter like this and set it to the frequency that you want. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like, you don't have to do anything dynamic with a dynamic EQ or linear phase unless you have a purpose for that. Right? And this is one of the things I cannot really teach you guys mixing when it comes to this kind of stuff, right? I can do streams where I teach you guys mixing. I can do or where I mix on stream. I can do videos on the concept. I can do shorts where I show little tricks, but I can never really teach you how to mix something properly because it just relies on doing the bare minimum to the sound so that they work together. And a lot of people try to like overcomplicate the whole process. Like this, as you said before, do I need to have a dynamic high shelf at 10k or do I need to use linear phase EQ? Just low pass it. If it has too many high frequencies, low pass it. The problem comes with the exception to these rules, which is, for example, the high pass. Many people say there's a lot of lower frequencies over here other than that, if you don't know about the like phase shift, then just high passing it seems like a very logical step. So in that case, it's kind of like the same, right? You can make two logical decisions, which is the low pass on the kick, which is a very logical decision. Just low pass it because I don't want anything above 10k. So I set it to 10k so that I don't get any of that. Very logical. Same can be said for this other way around. Very logical that you say like, oh, I don't want anything below 40 hertz because I don't need that information. My speaker cannot play it anyway. But there's a consequence to that, which in this case matters. And in this case, it absolutely doesn't matter. The phase shift of 10k is never going to be a problem. In fact, is this true? If you set this to like 12k, then a 180 degree phase shift is going to be like 2 samples in the audio file. It's going to shift the phase from here to there. Whereas with a low pass, it's going to shift the phase from here to there, right? So that is a massive amount of phase shift that you're going to get. That's a massive distance, and that is why in the lower frequencies it's an issue, and in the higher frequencies a phase shift just does not matter. You can imagine that this click, if we zoom in it over this sample being phase shifted to maybe like say over here, it's you cannot see the difference. Like look at the difference between this thing and the grid line, right? So there's this whole distance in between. Let's have a look if this actually shows up if I zoom out. It just looks like it's on the grid. We're not seeing a whole beat, and it's already indistinguishable from just the beginning of the sound or the actual grid. I realize my interface is probably not the best to actually show that, but you can trust me, like it doesn't show, right? I like the idea of not using EQ at all if I don't have to, but when it comes to surgical cuts, it makes a huge difference which EQ and what the cut order of the slope. Yeah, but it doesn't have to be a dynamic shelf. It can just be an EQ cut. It can just be a low pass. A dynamic shelf only helps you if you need to do something to parts of the sound. So if you say like, I want the high frequencies to be lower here, where they're very strong, but I want the high frequencies to be normal here. But in the kick, there's no high frequencies here. So that makes no sense, right? The high frequencies only exist at the faster oscillations, which is over here. So the dynamic EQ, like the dynamic EQ isn't really going to change anything to you. It's going to detect this frequency. It's going to lower that volume, and it's just going to rise back up because there's nothing else over here. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. In fact, I would argue that even today's video, the one that I posted on sound design, gives a very good framework for learning mixing. Let me go to YouTube Studio so that I can post that video because it needs a little bit of promotion. It's not doing the best. My channel in general hasn't been doing great in the last like week and a half, I would say, which is unfortunate because during the last sale I had the exact same problem. Yeah, this video is not performing as it should. This is the kind of video where I expect above average performance for my videos. Right, with the topic and the thumbnail that I made and the amount of time that it runs. It's kind of like a very similar video to my ultimate guide to kick and bass, in the way that I created it, in the way that I wanted it to perform as well. Yeah, but you can see it's just slightly above average. This thing should be at like 700, 800 views for my expectation. So my channel is underperforming, 100%. I'm even, as you can see, losing subs from it, I guess. But anyway, this video I wanted to show it because this gives you a fairly good framework of how to learn of how to learn mixing. In the sense that you just have to associate a process with a result. And that is what I talk about in that video, in the terms of sound design, of course. But in the terms of mixing, that is just something that you have to do through experience. That is not something that I can sit you down for and teach you. Because it's purely about listening, right? But for guitars, for instance, they don't recommend high passing at all. Okay. To me, that makes the statement they don't recommend high passing at all makes very little sense, because every guitar is going to be different, right? Like I can say, for example, you should low pass the kick at 10k. But if there's nothing above 10k, like maybe in the case of some of the kicks that I'm selling or stuff like that, where I've already done it, I don't honestly remember if I did it for the quality kickback that somebody asked before. Say that I already did that the low pass for you. It makes very little sense to low pass something, to low pass away frequencies that aren't there. You are a champ, don't despair. I know that. And this is just a thing that happens with YouTube channels, partially. It just annoys me that anytime that I'm trying to run a sale, my YouTube channel gets like in a downward trend, and I lose out on some money because of that. I know for a fact that I do, because, you know, marketing, and that's how it works. I don't think I can show it like this, but I can show it like this, right? If I go to total, yeah. I can show you if I go to this amount of days over here. Can I show that? I can probably show that if I remove this metric. You can see my channel does this weird thing where it goes up, and then you say like, oh, I'm growing, nice, and then it goes down again. And here it was stable for a while, it even went slightly down over here, but then at this point, I started putting in a little bit of extra work. I saw it growing. This is where I decided to run a sale. From the 10th of December up until the 10th of January or something like, or the 20th of December. I think over here, this is where I ran the sale. So this is exactly in like a lower part of the channel. And then after the sale kind of concluded, I saw the growth again. It grows. And then at some point, for no clear reason, suddenly my views halved again. And then here it started growing. And I had a video pop off. This was the kick video. And this was a particular short of mine that popped off. But apart from those, I'm already kind of like back in this spot over here with the channel. You can see it in the views now. It took a little bit longer to catch up, but I can see in the back end kind of how many times my shorts are being shown, how different content is performing amongst each other. But in the last like week and a half, all of my shorts have been either 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, which is just bad, right? It's not good for the channel. It means that I'm actually slowing down. For sure, check the analyzer first. Listen. Not checking the analyzer. Listen. Listen, what does the sound need? And that is something that, as I said, I cannot teach you. You have to do 100 mixes before you get decent at that. And you need to do 300 before you become professional level with mixing. That's just how it is. Some samples come way over processed. Is that a good thing? I don't know what you mean by way over processed. It will again depend on the context. It's not like, maybe you say like, oh, a snare is already pre-distorted, then that's a snare that should probably be used in dubstep, right? Like if I go into one of my dubstep sample packs, that I don't have here anymore, I have them here. If I go into like the which one is it? This? Yeah, Tarot drums for dubstep. If I go into any of these snares, it would be very weird to use these snares in a sidetrance track, because they're not made for sidetrance. They might be like overly processed for sidetrance, but for dubstep you would definitely saturate these even more, even though they are very, very distorted. So everything is context based. And therefore another issue that you have with mixing is that you cannot really make a mixing tutorial which is independent of the context that you use to explain it. Right? So if I say I'm mixing this track, this is the track that I'm working on, I have to play the track and I have to give you audio examples within the track for anything to make sense in terms of explanation. Not yours, but function loops, master loops, etc. Again, what does it mean to be over processed in that? Like, it's going to, the amount of processing that the sample needs to have is going to depend on the context. So if you're trying to make minimal Goa and you're using some full-on samples, then yeah, it's going to sound overly processed because you're using the wrong samples. But does that mean that the sample pack is bad or in some way, or does that just mean that you're abusing it or using it for a context that it wasn't made for? Again, in the same way that I could argue that these snares are very over-processed if you're trying to make sidetrance with them. But if you're trying to make dubstep on them, you're definitely 100% guaranteed you are going to saturate these more. You are going to distort these kind of samples more. I always have to turn them down by 3 to 6 dB. You mean mixing? Do you pitch your snares to the root note or to scale? I don't pitch my snares. In fact, I remove any resemblance of any tonality out of my snares. When it comes to my snares, the ones that are, for example, in my pack over here, if you go into Psychedelic Drum Pack Volume 1, what you'll find is that there's a little bit of a fundamental. I have put a key information in here, but anytime I use this in a track, what I'll do is I'll go in here and I'll remove the fundamental and any resemblance of a key from something like that to something like this, and this is just noise. So this does not have key information. Turning down a track by 3 to 6 dB has nothing to do with it being overly processed. Like if it was hitting the ceiling through a limiter. I mean, that's just samples being full scale. Right? Samples are loud because they are often, at least, full scale. Right? They make use of the whole range that they have available. This snare as well, my snares as well. This snare is loud because the file is fully used. Right? And if I give you a sample pack like this, where all of the snares are very quiet, the noise floor is going to be closer to the highest peak of the sample. So if you then turn it up, you're also turning up the noise floor. In fact, I would argue that it's better for samples to be like this, so that the samples like volume to the noise floor's volume is the highest it can possibly be. And then you can just turn it down if you need to. Because at the end of the day, that's mixing. That's the whole idea of mixing a track, is that you balance the volumes out with each other. Anyway, we haven't listened to any music so far, and I've been back from my break for like, how long now? 10, 20 minutes? We should probably get back into the actual music listening part of this stream, which is what I like to do. So next up, we have 4i20 music. Let's see here. This is Clipsum Arcane. Wait, so this is 4i20 and Clipsum, which have made the track Arcane. Okay. This is going to be on the edge of copyright stuff, because I know that he releases stuff and I might get into issues with copyright. But if that is the case, of course I'll message you if there's ever an issue. I think this is not in the file, those clicks. I think that's just the download speed not keeping up. I think you should duck the transients of the snares. I do, yeah. I showed that before with the LFO tool. You can sometimes do that if it becomes a problem.
Since the beginning of time, there has been magic in the world. In ages past, when magic, science,
This is how you leave space for vocals, guys.
people thought
just low pads, nothing above 1k except the vocal.
It changed the seasons and brought feast or famine. But who were the first magicians?
Honestly, it could be cool in this spot to remove that like main atmosphere so that the drums come through a little bit more, so it just cuts it off on the first kick hit. Because right now the pad just kind of keeps playing.
Let's begin.
Very quiet kick and bass. I'd make this kick and bass a lot louder, so it's louder when the drop actually plays. Nothing should play on top of kick transients. I disagree. You have space on top of the kick transient, you just have to be careful. Like often a little bit of sidechaining will help, but sidechaining out everything from that particular point is just going to sound strange. Like it just literally cuts out sounds. The track is quiet compared to your mic. I can turn it up here again.
Science.
Yeah, definitely the kick and bass itself needs to be a little bit louder. Is it me or is there some bass just missing there? I hear this like building up melody pad kind of thing. What I would personally probably do if you're going to transition into it, which obviously you aren't, then I would have not played it up until the transition point. What I would do now in this case is I would probably just completely remove that like melodic lower part of at least this part of the track. Maybe in a break like this it could be better. But have that acid come through maybe a little bit more. Because they're playing the same melody. But I have to go. Catch you next time. Regards from Israel. Thank you for stopping by. This is CTZ mixing. It is absolutely not. And clearly not. There's clearly very little clipping going on in here. It's a very dynamic track. In fact, I would say it's probably unmixed yet. In fact, I would say this is probably like a production still.
But you won't clap yet. Because making something disappear isn't enough. You have to bring it back.
Not to say that the mix is necessarily terrible, but it could definitely be better.
Every magic trick.
Very cool glitchy thing happening there. Does this mean it's bleeding into the transient? This transient is different from this one, so that would suggest it is. I mean, the CTC is nothing should play on top of the kick, I think. No. No, clip to zero method is something different. It has to do with the way that you're using clippers in your mixing stage. And how you clip every track to 0 dB and then lower it again, and then you in the next stage you clip again and again and again.
Not really looking. You don't really want to know.
In C2Z, the kick is go to 0 dB full scale, and the transient of the snare makes kick to clip. Not yet, no, not really. That has nothing to do with it. Clip to 0, for example, isn't a mixing style that you would even use for psytrance. Because clip to 0 is a very specific way of handling clippers in the mixing stage. In the sense that everything is clipping. And that is not something that we like to do on psytrance because, for example, we like our sub bass to stay unclipped, right? So you'll never see a clipped off kick over here. Say that you were to clip this kick off, you would see clipping happening over here, over here, over here, over here, over here, and then on the transient, probably in that order. So clip to 0 is not something that we would use on a track like this because it clips off the parts that we don't want to have clipped. Which for clip to 0, for people that actually use clip to 0, isn't a problem because they are going for a very distorted sound anyway, so that doesn't matter. I think you can use it for every EDM genre. No. You shouldn't clip everything. Yes, you should. When using clip to 0 method, you clip everything. Clipping what has been clipped will reintroduce that distortion that has been shaved off by the first clipper by many times. There is a wave of clip to 0 on the internet. Yeah, but clip to 0, you only use that in very specific situations. It is not your everyday production philosophy. I shouldn't even say mixing philosophy because it already starts in the production, as Tomz pointed out. You set up your elements in a way that you are going to have very little overlap, and you basically essentially you clip everything, but you clip everything in a very strategic way. That's why I'm not saying like, oh, it's just simply clip everything. Because there is a lot to it. There's a reason for the video tutorials being like 10 hours long. I don't think so, again, as far as I understand. Well, I've seen the videos and he clips everything. Or they clip everything, sorry. At least in the way that they explain it, Baformatics, who is the person that first really explained the clip to 0 method well, they clipped everything. I use clipper but never clip to 0 dB. To be honest, the clip to 0, I think clip to 0 is maybe a bit of a misnomer. Because at the end of the day, you're always kind of clipping to at least a ceiling. Which where the ceiling is not going to matter because you have input and output. Right? If I take this snare over here and I clip it, by pushing it 6 dB into it and then compensating by going 6 dB lower over here, or 5.9, whatever it wants to go to. Am I really clipping to 0? Well, I'm pushing it into the ceiling at 0 dB, because that's where the ceiling is, right? At 0 dB. The only way that you would maybe say that it's really not clip to 0 is if you start adjusting the ceiling. But this wouldn't be, I think, part of the clip to 0 method because we're turning down the output, I believe. Either the output or the volume over here. I think the whole essential idea of clip to 0 is that you don't really do that. Is that you just push everything into it and you stack upon top of each other until the clipper actually starts doing things. I mean, I never mix with the clip to 0 method. It's not needed. Psytrance doesn't get loud enough for the clip to 0 method to even make sense to implement. In fact, I would argue you would destroy a lot of what makes psytrance good, which is the very clean but very loud sound. You're not going to get a clean sound with the clip to 0 method. Anyway, I know that we've been talking mainly about mixing things, but the track itself is very, very good sounding. Sounds very nice. There's a few details, mainly the kick and bass, not really having the impact that I would expect from it. So the kick and bass can be a bit louder, especially in the drop. What I personally like to do when it comes to these kind of issues is just raise the kick and bass volume in the drop. And in fact, anytime I have kick and bass in my breakdown, which is like filtered in or transitioning in, I personally like to turn that down by 5 dB. So that when the kick and bass actually hits, all of those frequencies become louder and you get more impact from the kick and bass. And people say like, oh wait, this is loud, we have to start dancing. Next up we have Forcewave by Hans Ueli. Just started this today. Normally I make progressive. This is my first Force/Psy track. Cool. Let's have a listen. Force.wave by Hans. Nice clean kick and bass, I like that. I don't think Force does a lot with the type of kick and bass that you're using here though. This sounds more like a full-on kick and bass to me. The sound design is very Forcey though. Like, I don't think you often hear hats on top of the kick in Forced. I should probably turn this up again, right? Bit of a strange key change there. Some very loud sounds over here. You should probably turn those down. Here another one. Those are the sounds that you should be looking for when you're trying to make sure that nothing is too loud. Those things that really stand out and kind of take over the mix. Which seems to be happening with a lot of your one-shots and that kind of stuff. Sounds cool. Some cool ideas in there. I would probably say that with the way that you have made it now, it's more towards full-on than like proper Forced. Because Forced, I believe, has a darker kick and bass to it. It has more of the knock kick and bass, whereas this is really like the punch kick, right? Yeah, not much more to say. It's still an idea. So I would love to hear how you finish this track. There's some cool animations going on here as well for some reason. But next up we have Cosmic Mystery. Been producing for a month, first export. Okay, so a very new producer over here. I feel raindrops on my head. I feel cold. Can I play this? Is this a remix? I've learned there are clippers thanks to Buffalo. And basics about saturation. I've learned a lot from them. I don't know if I can play this or not. Is this like a splice vocal or is this like a remix? Because remixes I don't play, as you guys know, by the rules over here. But even here I'm scared that this is just a vocal that he got from somewhere that is actually copyrighted. So if he is here in the chat, it would be nice to hear. It doesn't say remix, right? So that's the only thing that is maybe like giving me a little bit of comfort that this vocal isn't going to get struck. But if it is, one of the things that is happening is that this person has been producing for a month, so I highly doubt that they're knowledgeable about copyright law. right? There's a very good chance that this person just got started in the creative field, as they said, started producing a month ago, and they have no idea what they're legally allowed to take in terms of somebody else's vocal, somebody else's idea, and what they're legally allowed to do with that. And I do have to care about that stuff, because I'm a YouTube channel with 16,000 subscribers, which would become a target if I constantly started violating people's copyright. I don't. To be honest, I don't know what to do at this point. I was hoping that this person would be in chat. Maybe it's their vocal. Maybe it's the one of their friends that they're recording. Maybe it's a sample that they found somewhere and that they just didn't know if they could use or not, so they just threw it in there. But right now, I'm not. I don't think that I'm going to play it. I'm like on the edge. Maybe I should play it, maybe not, but I don't think I will. Which is just unfortunate because it's part of the rules here. And in this case, if he did say to me like, "Oh yeah, you're fully in your right to play it," it's perfectly fine. Sometimes people respond here, but he hasn't. But this sounds like the kind of vocal that's like could be a problem, right? Could be subject to copyright. So I'm just going to move on, is what I'm trying to say. Next up, we have Tomz, who is here in the chat and can respond to questions. So that's nice. Just uploading my recent experiments. MB, it will be a track. Sorry, I have it set way too loud. I was like, this is a very loud intro, and then I remembered, yeah, I had to give 8-9 dB of gain for that last track to work. Some cool bass thingies happening there, I like that. Right now the texture is just kind of opening up and closing, opening up and closing. It would be nice if it did something a little bit more interesting. Kick and bass needs cleaning. Overall though, I like the tonality of it. Transient of the bassline could be a little bit louder. The click of it, because it feels very low now. I'm not sure I'm a fan of the open hat on both the kick and the offbeat. I would just keep it on the offbeat and yes, stick to the closed hat on the kick. Very loud resonant sound there. I would turn that down. Here stuff is sounding very mono to me. This synth over here and the last synth as well, they sound just completely in the middle of my head. Is this where it stops? No. It's just the download is too low. It's just not, the download is not keeping up here. My stream isn't keeping up. Is it because I'm running also the preview? Like if I pause it is paused. I think it's just my internet. I'll try to leave it here a little bit. Maybe move back a little bit so that we get started again, and I hope that it doesn't again stop halfway through. That would be very annoying. But it's just in general annoying streaming with this internet quality. Yeah, here, it died again. It just completely died. It's not even bad luck. It feels just like whenever I'm using the internet doing my stream, which obviously when I'm doing this I have to do all the time because I have to load your guys' track, I have to sometimes look up a website, that kind of stuff. It feels worse, which would suggest to me that my connection is like just good enough to do the streaming that I'm doing now. Keep in mind my bitrate is very low. I'm streaming at a bitrate of maybe like 4K. Whereas you should be streaming this kind of quality, the 1080p at a much higher bitrate. I tried to make a track, but properly I will start over with some of the ideas. I would just continue working on it. I'll leave it load for another bit, and then we can try to continue playing it. In fact, let's try it now. Yeah, but this is the synth that I set together with the synth from the last section that is a little bit too mono for me. It's barely keeping up. Sorry, I'm trying to look if it's actually gonna work. Again, this thing is very loud. I like that this track is a bit more segmented in terms of its ideas. It's still like a dark side kind of track. It's maybe a little bit faster than that last track, but overall, its main idea of this synth because that kind of breaks that illusion. But it's much better to come in with a synth like this, which is completely new to this segment. This is a bit strange. There's not really a transition happening there. It feels like the asset was accidentally left there. Again, not a fan of the hat on top of the kick, also being like a semi-open hat, I guess. Here again, this synth could be doing some interesting stereo play right on the left and the right of your head, but it's squarely in the middle. You're not one of the 2 people in my chat that is deaf in one ear, right? Like, I'm talking about all of this stereo stuff and I'm just bashing somebody that cannot actually hear stereo. I know Kingpin. He comes in my chat regularly, but there was another guy recently in my chat and I unfortunately forgot the name. So maybe it is you. And I'm just telling you to do the one thing that you cannot hear. I don't think I'm a fan of this low reverb in here. It honestly sounds like there's like a feedback loop somewhere in the background that you forgot to completely close. That we're just listening to. Yeah, it sounds like you either accidentally or intentionally put in extra mud in your track, which is a little bit counterproductive, I would say. Not yet deaf, but my left ear is weaker. Oh. Yeah, that would be annoying to do stereo stuff and that kind of stuff when you only have one ear. That's like impossible. Not like impossible, it's actually impossible. Anyway, overall the ideas are good. I hope that you actually finalize this into a track and not say that you did where you just take a bunch of ideas from the track and kind of continuously work on one project, but just moving the ideas from project to project. I don't think that that's very productive. It tends to also not result in the best kind of music, because then you get kind of overproduction very quickly. Anyway, next up we have Tayo, also known as this, but I cannot pronounce that. And this is In Progress. Let's see. I'm trying to look at the connection to see if it has an actual impact. It actually did not have the internet necessary to actually load the track. That sometimes happens, that it times out on SoundCloud itself. That the web page loads, but the thing that has to load in the web page doesn't actually load. In this case it does, so that's nice. How long have I been live for? 2 hours and 34 minutes. I might close the queue after this, because after this track there's 2 more. This one is 9 minutes. This is without intro outro. That's going to be like another 6 minutes, and this is 3 minutes. So that should get me roughly to like 3 hours of streaming. I'm gonna close the queue here because I have editing stuff to do. Sorry. Okay. Anybody else want joining right now? Next week, I'll obviously be back, and then you can submit your stuff. Anyway, without further connection issues and anything of the sort, let's listen to In Progress by Tayo. Depending on where this goes, I'm not 100% sure if you want to do chord changes this much. It's not really a Psytrance thing to do a lot of these kind of chord changes. Maybe you are going for a little bit more of a progressive vibe, in which case you can do that. That vocal sound should be louder. I like a clean kick and bass. I like how clean it is. Overall though, what I could recommend is maybe have this part after the transient a little bit quieter. That's like roughly the 500 Hz region in terms of area. I believe we've already listened to this track as well. Some stereo play on those like sequences on that ARP could be nice, having it a lot wider. Because right now it feels like a lot of the stuff is happening in the center of the track. What I would do over here, especially because you kind of slide out with that what is it, the tape stop effect, is not bring back the synth, because you're clearly like sliding it out in the same way that the DJ would mix out with a tape stop. For the element to come back, it's sounding a little bit strange in my opinion. Sudden low pass, and that's the end of the track. It says explore more music, but that is actually the end of the track. I don't think I can just show you the track, which would be nice, but I can't do that. Again, we're skipping over this because this is a remix, and I don't play remixes, as I said many times before. So that means that we have 2 more tracks. One's from Pat Person, Still Not Done But Closer, Draft 2. I hope that this is the experimental stuff that we listened to on the last stream, because that would be really cool to hear that again. I think it is. I guess just sit back and enjoy, because this was... I went into this the first time, at least if it's the same track. The vocal is sounding a little bit dry here. I don't even know if this is the same track. It might not be. But if it is, it's very cool with the way that it experiments with different rhythms and such. Yeah, very dry vocals. A little bit of a backing vocal could be nice. A little bit of extra reverb delay. Here you can hear the vocal is, you know, put in the back, that kind of stuff. It seems like your sub bass is not leaving a lot of room for the kick. It would be nice for the kick to kind of come through a little bit more. Maybe you need to do some more side chaining. Maybe it's just a good idea to stop playing the sub bass in certain parts when the kick plays. Because here it seems like it's messing around. There it seems like the kick doesn't even have a sub bass. I think I mentioned it in the last feedback, but I'm not entirely sure if I'm a fan of the thing just kind of stopping. Here I like it because it's going into a breakdown, but the last one is a little bit strange that just kind of happens without any announcement, that kind of stuff. Is not really pleasant to listen to. since you have a different chord progression coming in under here, it might also just be cool to have at this point this like vocal residue resonant thing that you have going on, that this should be like completely volume down. So that already the other chords, the new musical idea can start to come in, as opposed to just kind of layering underneath this one resonant note that is currently playing.
Everybody, welcome to the beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end. Ooh, yeah, yeah, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end. Ooh, yeah, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end. Ooh, yeah, yeah, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end. Whoa, yeah.
I absolutely love the musical idea in this part. It needs better mixing. Because there should be a kick in here. There should be a snare in here. Right? And you can see the kick kind of being there, I guess. But it doesn't come through whatsoever. This is very loud if this is the same track. Yeah. This is experimental music, guys. I don't even know if there's a kick here playing anymore. If there isn't, there probably should be. It sounds like this part of the track really needs that solid rhythm. Something like that. It does need a good mix and master. I do offer mixing and mastering services if you're ever interested. But this track definitely, yeah, it definitely needs it. The idea is so good. It's just a shame that currently some of the things don't really come out the way that you would want it. Right, like the final chapter, I would almost call it, of the track where the beginning of the end vocals start. It's very loud, but not very impactful. And the reason for that is that kick doesn't really come through, right? Or in general, just the drums. They don't really come through at that point. So that is something that you would need to address. And that is the kind of thing that you would address in the mix. Final track of today is Mateus over here. I believe this is Matt J in the chat, but I might be mistaken. He hasn't been in here for a while and he just submitted, so might also not be. But this is Fast by Better Message. Sorry, I have to play it here because it, for some reason, sometimes just doesn't load in here. It doesn't really seem to have anything to do with the way that you're sharing it, because this is shared in the same way, and here it shows up. But here it just doesn't. Anyway, Fast by Better Message. Let's have a listen. Oh yeah, he did say no intro, no outro. It just kind of plays like this. It's really hard to judge, to say if like this part of the track is too busy Because this may be how he plans to come from the intro, in which case it is absolutely too busy. Also depending on the intro, of course. But if this is like, oh, we're in the second segment of the, or the third segment of the drop, then it makes sense for this part to be so busy. So that's hard to judge. And I wish you guys would just send full tracks, but I understand that sometimes that is not possible. We are getting a lot of dark side today. At this point, I would say the track is almost too empty, right? Because this is where all of the drums are playing. This is where it should be high energy. And it felt like in the beginning there were more elements than that they're playing now. Now it's just like a slow atmosphere. And every once in a while we have an effect. Sounds good, not a fan of the clap. I could see it being a little bit shorter would maybe be nice.
Flying high as a kite.
Hey, I know that vocal.
8 to 12 hour trip.
So here the kick and bass is just basically playing in the build-up. In this case I would lower it by 5 dB. Because now you have no impact on the kick and bass when this starts to play. In fact, because there's synths over here, it feels like the kick and bass goes down, right? Because relatively there's other things that are also loud here. Maybe replace the clap to a nice snare. I could agree, yeah. Although over here I don't really think it's an issue, but when it played before I thought at least it was too long. But you can indeed also just replace it. Because it's not feeling perfect. Like it's not bothering me to the point where I would say like, oh, you really have to replace it. Like it's properly a bad sample. But maybe it's not the best that you can find. Well, to be honest, the guitar sounding thingy sounds a little bit strange to me. I'm not entirely sure if that's in tune. Very loud pluck over there. Again. Another one. That's just probably one synth that is being too loud.
Flying high.
I like this part, but what I would do in this part is match the drums to the bass pattern so that you only have like your offbeat drum. Because right now I'm not entirely convinced that the rhythm is 1/8 and I'm not entirely convinced that it's 1/16. It's kind of like in the middle in a very unpleasant way, I would say. Here as well, if you want to do the gallop for your bass pattern, just remove this thing over here as well. Because this is kind of like matching what your bass is doing, but in the high end. Right? It's both impacting the groove. So there's like one groove on top of a different groove over here. I think the snare is quiet overall. The snare stands out to me. I disagree with you. It sounds like, as you said, a slap in the face, and it's definitely standing out for me. But it doesn't sound too quiet. No. Overall, I like that track. I like it a lot. There's a bunch of different cool ideas in there. I am going to end the stream here. It's been 3 hours, which is a nice time. We listened to a lot of music. There was a lot of Dark Side today, so that was very interesting. I actually have a Dark Side tutorial that I have to edit about kick and bass. And now I'm a little bit self-conscious on the kick and bass quality of it. I don't think I have a render of it. I did say in the recording that it wasn't mixed and that it's probably too sub-heavy the way that the kick and bass is now. But I can have you guys judge a little bit. This one. Do I want to save this? No. Very nice stuttered stream. For him, it's too loud. To be honest, I disagree with a lot of people on that the clap is that bad. It sounded okay. It didn't sound special in that it sounded really good. And it didn't sound special in that it sounded really off to me either. I could see it work. Anyway, I'll just play the kick and bass here to see if you guys like it. Very sub-heavy, I know. You can see over here. Maybe the click is a bit too much now. This is all stuff that you would need to change in the mixing context. But essentially I go over this kick and bass. Together with how to make a kick from scratch if you have the waveform. So that should be an interesting tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. Unfortunately, we had a lot of connection issues. There's nothing that I can do about that except wait and hope that it gets better in the next apartment. And if it doesn't, then I have to actually investigate, because then there's something wrong with my system. Something wrong with the way that I'm streaming, the setup that I have. I don't know. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope that the feedback was helpful. And I hope to see you guys again in the next stream, which I'll definitely do. I want to try a normal stream this week, and I want to try another editing stream, because I have, as I said, a lot of things to edit, including Conversations with Projector, which I'm now currently doing on a different channel. For everybody wondering where the Conversations with Projector has gone, that series, it is on its own channel. I made a whole new second channel where I think tomorrow I'm posting the 3rd episode. It's not really getting a lot of traction right now. At least not the second one. The first one seems to be okay. But either way, over here, if you guys are interested in all of the stream highlights and all of the recaps that I do from my streams, all edited down neatly so that you can quickly go through them. I'm trying to almost every other day post a video there of like a 15 to 20 minutes of stream segment. That is at least the goal. But yeah, that's going to be it. I hope to see you guys next time, and bye bye.